product over the time, and I mean that in the best way possible. If we look back a year before the original came out, Super Mario 64, Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, so many of these games came out prior to this. What did this game do? Well, first off, you were stuck with the very basic PlayStation 1 controller, that being there is no dual analog sticks. So this game provides you with, number one, antiquated controls, that being tank controls. Granted, a year before Resident Evil 1 had come out, that also has tank controls in it. It has a run button too. This game, while you can run automatically, also requires you to use L1 and R1 to strafe left and right. It's not just an option, it's a requirement if you want to survive in this game. Granted, the controls on my part personally, not the biggest gripe I have, but just to be clear, it is an antiquated control scheme. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that it's tacked onto something else that hinders this game to the utmost: performance. This game runs like straight garbage. Running it on an emulator, sure, I could, bump up the frame rate, I could bump up the HD quality of the textures, but it doesn't help the fact that base game, it runs very much atrociously. A lot of the time when you're in the arena, things kind of just look like a PowerPoint presentation. That, on top of the tank controls, makes it very uneasy to respond to things like using your boost, or trying to maneuver in the air, or even aiming, as you're aiming up and down with L2 and R2. Thirdly, this game's got a lot of serious loading time, just between simple things like the menus, to missions, to garage, to just about anything that you do in the game. There's gonna be a loading screen in between each and everything. Those three things are probably what makes it feel like the most a product of its time. However, everything else about the game is practically ingenious. Like, you've got things like the music. It's like it's got that real high upbeat, energetic feel to it. Like you're really in the 90s maneuvering a weaponized mech in a post-dystopian, post-apocalyptic world. On top of that, there's also the customization of this game. This is the biggest selling point in the series as a whole. This is part of probably the one thing that you'll always hear about with Armored Core. That's the customization and all of the mech parts. There are over 100 parts in this PlayStation 1 game, as well as the other two that came after the original. There's so much customization and so much thought put into each of the designs of the mechs and the weapons and the parts, like your boosters or your generators that give you energy to use the things that you have equipped. And lastly, while it does get hindered by the performance, the gameplay is still pretty fun. You really are pilot controlling these mechs. You shoot out rockets, you can shoot out machine guns, handguns, pulse rifles that send out these giant blue rings that could stun enemies. You've got just about anything you can think of within your arsenal, and they wreak havoc. Lots of explosions, lots of frame rate dips, lots of PowerPoint presentations, but also a lot of fun. And lastly, the arena in Project Fantasma, as well as Master of Arena, are good add-ons to the original game. That is to say, these two are considered full-on sequels. They are full games. They're not expansions or DLC. They're full-on sequels to the original game. But there's also Armored Core 2 and 3 and God knows how many more there are in this series. Overall, combined with the music, the gameplay, the mech designs, which are designed by a widely acclaimed and very famous mecha designer. All of this stuff added together make this game feel very unique to a large library of PS1 games. This also coming from the fact that this is a game that came out a year after the PlayStation 1 first launched. And to give a quick summary of how I feel about each of them, I'm just gonna run through them real quick. Armored Core 1, it's probably solid, the most solid of them all, as well as it's got a bit of like proof of concept behind it. There's the ranking system that doesn't really do anything besides give you an idea of just how far you are into the actual main story. Missions that you select, they sometimes will branch out into different story paths where you pick between two different corporations you work for directly, but they all kind of conspire at the end for one main ending. So overall, pretty consistent. between whichever corporation you decide to side with. Armored Core Project Fantasma. This is the first sequel to the original game. This one also adds ranking systems, but not in the way that it worked in Armored Core 1, because actually there are 50 rankings. You start at rank 50 and it's an actual arena. You have to climb your way up to rank 1 by fighting in PvP arenas these AIs of all of the other armored cores that are being piloted. And each of them have their own descriptors and some backstory on them. This is probably the best part of Project Fantasma. Missions are very varied into where they are. They add in brand new maps that weren't in the original game, and so that really helps with the value for this one. This game, I like this one a lot. I like that they expanded on the rankings by making you actually fight in an arena style thing to get your rank up instead of just it being progressed through the main story. If you ask me, Master of Arena is basically a copy paste of Project Fantasma. I don't think it's as good. And in fact, I think it's actually not that good at all to begin with. There are a lot more newer parts added into Master of Arena, but the thing is that at some point they have this feature in Master of Arena where there are 2 discs for the game. The first disc has the main missions as well as the basic arena. Disc 2 has EX Arena. EX Arena is basically themed arenas. If you join the humanoid leg arena, that means that you have to join in with humanoid legs on your mech. Or if you're going into the caterpillar one, you have to have caterpillar legs, so on and so forth. Those are pretty interesting. The end game, after you complete the main missions, you unlock Champion Arena, and the thing is that with this is where the game starts to falter a bit. Prior to this, I felt like there were quite a bit of arena fights, and most of the time they didn't put up much of a challenge compared to Project Fantasma. And we're specifically talking about the top 10 rankings in Project Fantasma compared to everyone else in Master of Arena. Master of Arena, everyone else is a complete wash, a complete pushover. They are very easy to fight. Everyone in Champion Arena, they are really annoying. They're like wasps picking at you from afar with pistols or this green rifle that I've just grown to hate with all my passion, as well as having the Moonlight Blade, which you can unlock from getting it in the original game. Make sure you do that before you do any of these sequels. Make sure you get that weapon. Point being, every single one of the fights within the Champion Arena all felt practically the same. They were all very jumpy, very mosquito-like, and also just too fast, you know? I did burst them down. I got through the Champion Arena, and I wasn't really interested to go much past that. I will say I did like the FromSoft Arena, which is essentially just an arena filled with a bunch of the From Software employees that had worked on the games at this point. And there's a good variety in those guys. It's funny how only one of them though has a tank style, that is the caterpillar legs. Only one of them has that, and that was a fight to behold. Overall though, Master of Arena was pretty underwhelming, even though it ties a lot more closely to the original game compared to Project Fantasma. Those 2 games are essentially prequels to the first game, but Project Fantasma feels like filler, whereas Master of Arena feels like it's a lead up to everything else that's going to happen in the original game. But both stories are a bit forgettable if you ask me personally. So overall, my ranking would probably look something like Armored Core Project Fantasma, Armored Core 1, and then Armored Core Master of Arena. But Master of Arena goes way down below Project Fantasma and Armored Core 1.